Bungie's newest game, Marathon, looks to be in some serious turmoil as even the developers themselves aren't very excited about its arrival. We actually just received this news today from Jason Schreier on a podcast where he was talking about Marathon's sentiment within Bungie HQ. Now, he got all this information from former Bungie employees, ones that were laid off from this project and from Destiny 2 as well. And so he's able to piece together a lot of what's going on in Bungie when it comes to developing Marathon. Let's listen in.
I was going to say, what's the temperature check on how Marathon is going?
Not the laugh.
Not great from what I've heard.
Not great.
There's a reason that it was planned for this year and slipped a whole year, and people that I've talked to are a little pessimistic about it even hitting its current planned deadline, but we'll see. I don't know exactly when that is, sometime in 2025, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, the sentiment I've heard is not great around it, at least as of a few months ago.
Okay, right. So, because that was going to be definitely one of my big questions is, have you spoken to anyone that's like, yeah, man, Marathon, wait till you see Marathon. Like, this is it, man. We're ready to go. Like, nothing, no one has said anything close to that.
No, and I'm not sure it's the right bet. Like, it's an extraction.
That's actually kind of crazy to hear that all of the previous former Bungie employees that are actually working on Marathon didn't have like the hype or the enthusiasm around it, especially when you saw that around the arrival of Destiny. I mean, everyone was really excited about Destiny's arrival, and it feels kind of like that temperature check is way off right now, especially from those that are Destiny 2 players. We're not especially hyped about Marathon, and Jason Schreier goes into some of these details here in just a moment where he kind of breaks down like Destiny 2 players. They're kind of a PvE crowd. They've obviously aged with the game a little bit. You know, you started playing, most of us or a lot of us started playing maybe 10 years ago or maybe even less, but for many years we've played the game, and so we've kind of aged, and so pushing into a PvP game, kind of an odd move by Bungie, and he's going to go ahead and highlight this right now.
Shooter, like, so PvP, is there any PvE attached to that? Like, I don't think that's what
I want to know.
A lot of Bungie fans are looking for exactly. So it is kind of a strange bet, at least from my kind of subjective standpoint. The other important thing to note is that Marathon has had a big leadership shakeup. They lost their director a few months ago, got a new director a few months ago, and during this round, their executive producer left the studio as well, so they are going through some changes for sure.
So Marathon's executive producer left during this round of shakeup.
I believe that's. Let me double check the title to make sure that I'm
sure.
Yes. Yeah, oh, well, I guess, okay, so Carrie Guskas, according to LinkedIn at least, she was executive producer until April, so I guess that was the same time that Chris Barrett, who was the director, left, and then she was senior director of development. But yes, she just left. I guess she wasn't EP, she stopped being EP on Marathon in April, but she did just leave as well. So yeah, there's a huge leadership shakeup on that team in April, and it'll I guess we'll see what happens there.
And you know, you have your perspective on it as well. Speaking as someone who plays Destiny and obviously talks to a lot of Destiny people, there's not a lot of excitement for Marathon like within the Destiny community. Like, that's not what we're about at this point. Like, ultimately Destiny is right now a PvE game. It has this very awkward PvP thing bolted onto it that has essentially decayed over the years because Bungie have not invested in it. So Bungie's fandom right now is a PvE audience, and they're also older, which is something else that came out in the reporting, that the audience who plays Destiny is older. Older PvE focused players are not interested in an extraction shooter. Like, that's just not it.
Sure.
So Bungie really are trying to build an entirely new audience here, and it seems like they're trying to do it with this massive investment, hundreds of people, hundreds of millions of dollars spent, it seems, whereas it would have been far smarter for them to make this a smaller bet and to sort of seed it into the community and build it up over time and prototype it over time. It's just, this seems crazy to me,
And so that's a point that I find really, really interesting. Obviously, it's a subjective point where we're talking about what is Destiny 2's current audience, mostly PvE people. So now Bungie's going to try and sell a PvP game to the same audience, or like he mentioned here, create an entirely new audience. Now it does need to be said though that obviously Bungie built all of this off of the backs of Halo and Halo's immense success, which is obviously primarily a PvP game. So you have PvP focused Halo, and then that leads us into Destiny 2, which is mostly PvE, but does have PvP. And now we're presumably going into Marathon, which is going to be an extraction shooter. And I don't think we've ever seen an extraction shooter that actually has really intrinsic PvE elements, but hopefully there is something there, because otherwise the Destiny 2, the conversion rate, right, from Destiny 2 players playing Marathon is going to be extremely poor, and that's definitely not what Bungie would want as a successful strategy, unless of course they're trying to build an entirely new audience, build an entire new generation of Bungie fans off of the backs of this new extraction shooter, which is a really bold strategy to just invest all this money, all this time and effort. And obviously if it works, and it's a good bet, obviously, if it, in the long run, but in the meantime, right now, when you have all this money that's being put into it and all these people being laid off, it's a risky bet in a lot of ways. You think about it. And he goes into some details here about just how risky he thinks this is.
Really, I'm crossing my fingers that this is great, because it just seems so risky. You know what I mean? And I would. Is there any sense of what would happen? Any discussion about what would happen if Marathon didn't pop off? Did anything pop up in those discussions?
I don't want to speculate. Definitely have that conversation with people, but it would be irresponsible for me to be like, well, Bungie's going to shut down if that doesn't happen. The one thing I will say though is that this is going to lead to some exclamation points. And if we were streaming right now, there would be some funny faces in chat. But I will say the Marathon story kind of reminds me of Suicide Squad, and the reason for that is because Suicide Squad started development in 2017 when live service was the hot new thing, and because of sunk cost fallacy and because of endless delays and because there wasn't really an interest or willingness in canceling it because they had committed so much money to it, and there was just a belief that like, all right, we want to get this out, it's going to be cool, it came out and just totally flopped. And I'm worried about Marathon being in a similar situation where it's been in development for a while. It entered development when extraction shooters were super hot.
Everyone's talking
I don't
about
know
Tarkov.
if that's the case anymore.
Not so much,
and
really.
now, because they've committed so much money and because it was the project that was furthest along as opposed to all their other incubation bets, they are really putting a lot into it, and I'm just not sure there's much of a chance that it will be successful. But then again, you never know.
That's actually a really good point, which is that we don't know. Obviously, when they wanted to start making Marathon, the climate was different in gaming, especially, I don't know when the exact timeline was when it started, but clearly COVID and the success of the gaming industry as it blew up from COVID and became so much more lucrative, they decided to start creating a ton more incubation projects at Bungie. And an extraction shooter wasn't necessarily a bad idea. I see why Bungie chose it. Like, they narrowed in on that vision of an extraction shooter because it's kind of an untamed area. Like, you have Escape from Tarkov, which is very popular and pretty well put together, but it's not put together. There's not so many extraction shooters that it's kind of overpopulated, right? Bungie didn't want to narrow in on making, like, for example, a battle royale game, right? They decided, you know what, we'll let Fortnite have that, we'll let PUBG have that, and the other battle royale games, right? Instead, we'll focus in on a smaller niche, which is the extraction shooters, and maybe blow this niche up. Maybe make a version of an extraction shooter that's so much better than all the existing ones that they will then have the #1 extraction shooter, which is a much more attainable goal, especially as a one game developing studio, like clearly trying to battle against, like, for example, if they tried to make a battle royale, trying to battle against Fortnite and their billions of dollars of money that they can pump into this game, it's going to be really, really difficult to do. So I think it was a smart strategy at the time when they decided to do so. But now, fast forward several years now, and we're kind of seeing the hype and the luster of extraction shooters dwindle, at least in my opinion. And those are pretty much all of Jason Schreier's comments in regards to Marathon and how it's being developed currently within Bungie Studios. And it should just go to say that this is not a guarantee that Marathon is going to be a failure or a complete flop by any means. There's definitely a ton of potential here, and Bungie is going to obviously work really hard to actually ship a game of a high quality. And obviously all the comments that are made here, these are opinions about, the Destiny community not necessarily liking an extraction shooter. And like we mentioned before, extraction shooters not necessarily being the most popular at this point in time. This could all be the opposite, right? If Bungie actually put out an extraction shooter that was so well made and so fun and interactive and creative, that maybe this blows up the genre, and then maybe you start to see a ton of extraction shooters in the same way that we saw a ton of battle royales come out all of a sudden, right? Maybe this is the start of something huge for Bungie. At least that's what it seems like they're betting on. But right now, they're not particularly enthusiastic about it, which is definitely hard to hear because they only have 2 eggs in their basket. They got Destiny 2 and they've got Marathon, and they do kind of need them both to be successful. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all the news in Destiny 2, Marathon, and everything Bungie, I guess. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.